Hello and welcome back to Indie Book Talk. Today we have a very special guest with us. It is USA Today best-selling author of fantasy, mystery, and romance, Corinne O'Flynn.
Hi.
And, and, and,
Yes,
this is extra special because Corinne has some very important news to share with us.
I do.
She is,
She
in
has
fact,
secrets.
more than one person.
Oh, yes. Okay. I was
So,
like, wait a
Corinne,
second.
tell us
Is it
about your pen
Am I
names.
being punked? I don't think we discussed this. Yes, I write under several pen names that up until about this moment, I haven't really linked Corinne with the other two for a good reason. Nothing to be ashamed of, but would you like me to just carry on and tell you my
Yes,
sordid
I
tale?
would love to hear the good
please.
reason. Why do you need to be three people?
So, okay, for first reason is, well, I launched originally up in publishing since 2014 as Corinne, and that's urban fantasy and like young adult fantasy. And I do, or used to do, school visits to middle school and high school, and I teach a class on plot and character and storycraft and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And I launched in 2018 a steamy romance pen name, and I decided to make that a pen name simply because I have 4 children. I don't monitor what they read. They can read whatever they want to read. But I didn't want to be the author that broke the seal on somebody else's child going to the Corinne O'Flynn website and finding the hot stuff. So that was the reason for it. And then, and that started out as, because when I first started writing with romance, as Corinne, I had a pen name, a co-writer that I wrote with, and she and I would share. I would do the woman, and she would do the man, and we would do
Oh,
this, dual point of view, her chapter, my chapter, her chapter, my chapter, and it was this fabulous story. But anytime there was a sex scene in the woman's point of view, I couldn't do it. I was like, oh, okay. And the very first time, like, okay, so then she's like, this is ridiculous. So she would write the sex scenes, and then I can edit them and whatever else. And then I got invited through her to join this steamy romance novella group that was like rapid releasing and doing all that stuff. And I was like, okay. And it wasn't shared world. It was just like shared themes. So like we're all going on spring break. And so everyone's story is a spring break story regardless, but
what
they're not
fun.
lots and lots and lots of fun. And so it was rapid release and they were novellas. So it was fun and short. And we had this fantastic reader group. But they were hot. And so then the first time I wrote mine, I was like, oh my God, contemporary
It's
romance.
like, oh.
Right. Well, that happened too. But the contemporary romance, like as a fantasy writer, I was writing contemporary romance. I'm like, wow, this is like, and I'm not going to say it's easy because it's easy to write romance. It's just easy to write contemporary compared to fantasy because the world building doesn't like, it's just, I was like, what is this? What have I been doing all these years? And so are we saying curse words on this podcast?
Yeah,
Sure.
knock yourself out.
So
Yeah.
the very first time I wrote the word cock, I typed it and I was like, oh my God. Okay. And I had to get up and I went to the kitchen and I called my friend. I'm like, okay, I need you to talk me through this. I was having like, I don't know what it was because I have no shame. I have 4 children. Like we know where this stuff happens, So anyway,
But you're like, oh, no, I wrote it. Oh, God,
I
no.
wrote it and I'm like, okay. And then that story released and I got reviews and the reviews, some of the people like in the ARC team were like messaging me privately and like, wow, I really liked your sex scene. And I was like, oh, well, there you go. I only write what I know, girls, So anyway, so that was the beginning of that. And I loved it. And then I started reading paranormal hot stuff. And then I got involved in, not involved in, I dove into the world of reverse harem.
Really?
Really? Yeah. You guys play with reverse harem at all? Do you guys write it or read it?
I know what it is, yes.
Okay. So
That-
girl
yeah.
But we should
power.
probably explain it to anyone that doesn't know.
Okay, so reverse harem is kind of like what it sounds like, but not necessarily as misogynistic. It's one woman and many men, and especially in paranormal, it's like wolves and like a pack situation. For me, I write reverse harem as paranormal so that I can do like the fated mate thing, and I have prophecies, and I can do all that fantasy stuff with it. But it's wonderful because you get to tell 3 or 4 romances in the same story. And mine are slow builds, what they call it. Like book 1 will be dude 1, and then book 2 will be dude 2, and then dude 1, and then by the time we get to book 4, we're having like a busy bedroom, and it's kind of bananas, but I love it. I love writing it. And so that's my story. So then in the course of managing 3 pen names, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is absolutely bananas. And so now I'm kind of bringing them. I'm not changing the pen names because for marketing purposes alone,
Mhm.
it's you need to have separate groups of people. But so I have Corinne O'Flynn, who writes mystery and urban fantasy and that kind of stuff, all paranormal witches and stuff like that. And then I have Fiona Starr, which is my steamy paranormal, and then Daria Blake, which is contemporary romance, and that's just straight up male female. So there you go.
So did you have trouble, obviously, bringing a new pen name, you're not bringing your fans over. How did you go through all that again to get a new fan base? I mean, how hard was that 3 times in a row?
The third time it wasn't as hard because when I started writing the Fiona, so when I first started writing the male female contemporary shorts with the groups, I did that as Fiona. And then I realized I really want to stick with paranormal. And so my reverse harem series have a much greater following fan base in
Mhm.
than my contemporary stuff. So I peeled off the contemporary and I announced to the Fiona people, like, hey, the contemporary stuff's going over here to Daria. So those people are aware. But I took the Fiona stuff's all in KU right now, which eventually I'm going to be taking it wide. But
Mhm.
all the Daria stuff, I pulled all the contemporary titles away from Fiona and relaunched them. And so now I'm doing that as Daria. So I'm getting a new readership
Oh.
from a wide audience, which is slow. And that was more of the, oh my gosh, what have I done? I have started from zero, more so than the other. But, when I launched Fiona, I had the benefit of doing it with a large group and we
Mm.
built a readership and like we have a really nice reader group and all of that. So I wasn't doing that alone. Um, so I really didn't start from zero in either case, except now going wide. I think that's definitely much more of a starting from scratch kind of a setting.
So what made you go from, KU to wide?
Um, Control really, and the I don't know. I think that I worry about the constraint of Amazon really having all the reins, and we hear these stories
Mhm.
about authors getting their accounts shut down. And I'm not doing any kind of shenanigans, but you never know what happens, and I don't
She's
like
doing
to
shenanigans, but not this kind.
not doing the other kind of shenanigans. Um, but yeah, so it's about control and it's about like the longer view and speaking to a lot of authors that are wide. I joined the wide Facebook groups and like I'm trying to learn the different platforms. Like they don't really freak out about like one of their sayings is one of their sayings. Wide authors say bank over rank, so we're not like monitoring our rank so much and worried about hitting the bestseller like the orange tags on Amazon because Amazon's not the only game in town. So now I'm on all the retailers and I'm seeing that I'm not as reliant on one over the other.
Hmm.
And plus, there's a whole wide world of readers out there that are not in KU or using Amazon. So I'd like to do
Mhm.
it. I'd like to try that. So Fiona is actively in KU and she's of all the 3 pen names doing the best. So she's staying in
Mhm.
KU and I'm about to launch a new series on September 1st and that's launching into KU and whether or not that stays in for the whole duration, I'll see how it goes, but I'm ready to pull everything and go wide just for
Well,
the
I'd
sake.
heard romance goes really well with KU.
Yeah, well, everything. You know what? I think that there's a readership for everything, but reverse harem is definitely really popular in KU. And one of the things that I have not yet dug into is one of my accountability partners was telling me that the covers for paranormal romance, especially for reverse harem, are different wide, like the stuff that hits the readers. And I haven't really dug into that yet to know because I
Hmm.
don't know that many KU or that many reverse harem writers that are wide because the game is really happening in KU. So I'm still riding the KU wave on that. And when the time comes, I tend to be very methodical about what I do. So I'm going to test it and see before I jump.
Hmm.
But I don't know. A lot of romance authors, especially contemporary romance authors, do very well wide. So I think it's just a matter of whether or not, for me, it was always about, do I know enough about Kobo to market effectively on Kobo? And like, because
Mm.
you can't go wide and then start launching these like advertising marketing things on all the different platforms, it's just not effective. I need to know more about each of them and how they operate. And so I'm 7 months in, it's July. I'm in 7 months into my wide journey, and I'm just now really learning how they all work. I have been releasing one title a month wide.
Wow.
Well, because I'm re-releasing, I'm
Oh,
rebranding them, and they're already written.
okay.
So that I could learn the different platforms and try to get my best foot forward. But it's a process. It's a lot of work.
There's so much to learn with self-publishing, so much.
Always, always. But you know what? What a gift! Like, what a fabulous way to make a living.
So just curious, did you ever get any, I guess backlash is kind of a strong word, but of
Pushback?
people reading your the younger stuff and then finding the steamy things through your site? Did anything ever happen? Okay.
No, no. So my kids all know that I write steamy. My kids are all teenagers. They all know my pen names. They have no interest in reading it, and I don't hide it. Like, there's the books are out. Like, you can see them if you come into my office. Um, I think that the biggest thing that I worried about with like ever sharing any, like, because there are times where I'm like, oh, somebody individually will hear that I have a pen name, and I'll tell them what it is for whatever reason, and then they'll go buy the books out of curiosity, not because they're a fan. And that's what I don't want to have happen, because like I don't want to mess up my also bots. I don't want to mess up my readers. Like, all that stuff is a concern. But I think that the novelty of that is short-lived anyway. So anybody who's going to do it for that purpose, it's going to be happening this summer, because I am starting now to be out to people who didn't know that I wrote. Well, some of my friends know that I write hot stuff, but they're all like, wink, wink, ha ha, like, what do you write? And I'm like, I'm not ashamed of what I write, but there's a reason why. I'm like, because you can't deal with it is the reason why you don't understand it.
If you can't talk about steamy romance like an adult, you don't get to read it. That's
Yeah.
how
That's
that works.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, if you can't have this conversation over a meal, then no, step back. It's time for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, and I'm not going to be talking about like my writing over dinner, but at the same time, it's like, I'd rather just keep it in the readership land, and
Right.
there's actually something quite nice about having anonymous pen names. So I'm pulling the trigger on melding the three, and there's a bit of a palpitation, but I'm not
That's
worried
exciting.
about pushback.
So, what about marketing? We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but when you have three pen names, how do you decide how to allocate resources? How do you decide what you're marketing when?
It depends. Well, so first off, the name of the game is automation. So I use a scheduler from my and the one that I use is called Social Bee, and it allows you to
Oh.
have the different. I have a Daria segment, and I have a Corinne segment, and I have a Fiona segment, and you can upload that stuff and not worry about that. But for me, it is really about just what is going on right now. So a lot of the Corinne stuff is witches. So in the fall, Halloween, and like there's Sleepy Hollow-esque kind of a vibe to one of my series in this. So like those have the seasons that kind of do stuff. My contemporary romance, I write, like, I have a book. When we wrote them originally, it was one a month. So I have a January book and a Valentine's book and a St. Patty's Day book. So when that stuff rolls around, it's much easier, because it's contemporary, to hook it into whatever promos are going on. So it's really just a matter of paying attention to what's happening. And if I have pricing promotions and stuff, and being in KU, I'm limited to what I can do with my reverse harem stuff, right? I can do the free days and the stuff that KDP allows you to do. But it's really, I have an assistant who sends me every month a list of, here's all the promos that are available. I have actually my email that I got this morning. Here's all the promos that are available for the month of August that she's tracking for all of the people that she works for. And there are some of them that are contemporary romance, some of them that are paranormal romance, some of them that are like require a 99-cent book, some of them require a complete series. So I just kind of look through and I see what kind of feels good, and I kind of do it that way. It's really organic. I don't have a really like an annual plan. As much as I would love to have an annual plan for that, I don't. It's just I can't plan that far ahead. I don't do a lot of paid advertising, like paid newsletter stuff. I do a lot of swaps with other authors, and that just kind of happens as it happens.
So you have an assistant that helps you with marketing, promotion?
Yeah, she does. She will. So she's a PA for several authors. So she's
Mhm,
tracking like all these promotions. Like for example, like, hey, there's this paranormal romance thing going on. It starts August 3rd, sign up. You want me to sign up for it? And then I say yes, 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 no, yes, yes, no. And then she just signs me up for them. And then I pay her, which the amount of time that saves is ridiculous
mhm.
because, if you've ever filled out those submission forms, it's like the long blurb, the short blurb, the link, and the price, and like and here's the cover. I don't have to do any of that stuff. And then she will, I have her doing, I think, 3 graphics a week, one per pen name, and loading a new graphic for any one of my titles into the social scheduler
Mhm.
on a week. And then there's just this list that it just kind of cycles through on an evergreen basis, and like 3 times a week something will post. So we try to, like, I'm very much a let's not kill ourselves making this happen. Like,
Mhm.
we all should love what we do, and we should be able to come to our day. I have another business that I'm launching, a business coaching business, entrepreneur. It's called the Calm Entrepreneur, and it's about, you know finding foundational organizational strategies that make it a joy, so that you can get back to the thing that you love to do. So I tend to approach a lot of my stuff in a very organic, not very push way, and that
That's
seems to be
awesome.
working so far. So yeah,
No, I mean, assistants just seem to be the way to go to take some of that the heavy lifting off of,
yeah.
the creative side. And I mean, we can't be pros in everything. We need someone else to
No,
step in and help.
no, and you know what's interesting is like but years ago, before I had this assistant or any assistant, she's my first assistant. I was like, what would I use an assistant for? I'm a control freak. I don't want anybody in my stuff. But like, for example, in Social Bee, you're allowed to have another person's. They can have their own login credentials, so that's actually quite
Mhm,
nice. She also manages my swaps because in my paranormal romance pen name, swaps are the way to, like, they are much more effective than anything else. Newsletter swaps. So like, I will
mhm,
put somebody in my newsletter, in exchange they will put me in their newsletter. And so she handles that for me, which is like, hey, it's really time consuming, like, because you put it out there like, hey, I can, Fiona can share you on this date, and then you don't hear back from another day. And my assistant's in Australia, so there's a time zone change and everything else.
mhm.
So um like, not having to think about that is a really big deal. And I was like, well, what am I going to use an assistant for? And then my girlfriend's like, I have this wonderful woman, she does this for me. I'm like, well, and she's inexpensive, and I pay by the hour. So it's like, for 1 hour she can do all of my swaps for the whole month, and I do, for all 6 of my
Mhm.
newsletters. I do newsletters every 2 weeks.
Oh,
um
really? Okay.
so it's I don't know. It's interesting when you let go of the control and you kind of think about, well, what can I have an assistant do for me? Like, one of my girlfriends she logs in and does the whole newsletter, and then like the whole bottom half of the newsletter, like with all the swaps and all
Mhm.
the stuff. And I don't have her doing that for me because I don't know if that's a control thing or if that's just, I like setting it up, but it's kind of like a meditation for me. But and then my friend will go in and write the whole the letter part, the personalized part of the
Mhm.
newsletter. So I think it's just a matter of trying it out. And because the amount of time saved is kind of crazy. And then I can say to her, hey, so and so has a promotion coming up, can you get on that list for that? And then it'll appear on my list to include in my newsletter. Like, I don't ever have to think about it.
It's
So
magic.
it is. And it's I don't know. It was a surprisingly wonderful release because I never really thought, how can I have somebody do this stuff for me? Like, what are they going to do? Like, they can't. I format my books in vellum, so that's simple. They're not going to edit for me, so they can do promotion and marketing, and she can create graphics. Like, they could do anything, but mine does a whole lot of stuff that's tedious and time consuming. And because she's doing it for a lot of people, she's able to do a lot of it without it being, crazy for her to do it for one author. So I don't know. It's just
So
an interesting balance.
so you mentioned a newsletter every 2 weeks. How do you do that with the different pen names?
Every pen
Do
name
you
has its own email list.
Oh my goodness. So it's a
Yeah.
newsletter for each pen name? I'm
Yeah.
exhausted just thinking
Every
about
2
that.
weeks. So I actually send out 5 newsletters. Every 2 weeks, I send out. Corinne sends out a newsletter, and in fact, actually, Corinne's on pause for the summer, so I'm not doing anything for Corinne until the fall. I send out my 3 author newsletters every 2 weeks, and then I send out my my Calm Entrepreneur one. And then I have an author publishing planner that I created, and that is every 2 weeks. But those newsletters are like super like, hey, this is what's going on. So and so has a coupon, because like you can get it through Amazon or Lulu for the coil bounding one. So sometimes they have coupons and stuff. So I used to do it every week, and every week was absolutely making me want to rip my face off with like, I am not enjoying this at all. So I said, let's just put this every 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks is actually kind of nice. So I do it on Wednesday nights, comes out on Thursday, and I'm like, oh, look at that. I have a newsletter to do. So then it takes all day, and I take Corinne and it takes 20 minutes to do Corinne's, and then it takes 20 minutes to do Fiona's. And then by the time the day is over, I'll have everyone scheduled for the next day. So it's not like I sit there in 3 hours. I do it all throughout the day. So
I'm amazed.
Don't be amazed. It's actually it's really mundane, but it works.
Is this your full-time job? Like, you don't have like a 9 to 5, right?
I do not have. This is what I do for a living. Yeah.
Okay, good.
She
I
would
was trying
have
to figure that out. Like, whoa.
Well, I do have. So I run a nonprofit on the separately from this. But that has nothing to do with writing, and it is definitely a part-time gig. But I'm the executive director of a small local nonprofit, and I have everyone's at home because of summer and COVID and all that. So it's been kind of bananas like the last couple of years. But I'm super super type A organized, and that's what the coaching stuff's about. So it doesn't feel like this. Actually, I'm doing so much less than I used to do, and it feels really good.
Okay. Well, if people want to find you, where would they find you out there on the internet?
That was my question, but I didn't know how to ask it. There's so many versions.
It's interesting. So DariaBlake.com is Daria Blake. The FionaStar.com, because there is a Fiona Star out there who's doing something else. TheFionaStar.com is Fiona. CorinneO'Flynn.com is Corinne. And then I have TheCalmEntrepreneur.com, and I have Author Productivity, which is my planner. AuthorProductivity.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're all.
We will put all of those links in the description
because
you don't have to remember any of them. Yeah. They're all going to be in the description. You could just click or copy and paste whatever makes you happy.
Actually, what I'm working on right now to be launching relatively soon, we were talking about it before we came online, is selling direct on my website. And that's causing me to bring all of my stuff into a single shop. Well, when that happens, everything's going to be under CorinneO'Flynn.com, even though
excellent.
I'm going to still have the Daria and the Fiona websites, but when you get there and you want to shop, it's going to bring you to the other. So everything's going to be under one place. So Corinne O'Flynn will be the name.
You know where to find her.
Yes. 2 N's in both of my names and no double R. That's the thing that always messes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Corinne. This has been enlightening and motivating, and I feel like I need to get myself more organized. So I'm going to go check out your organization book. So yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.